Hi everybody. I'm going to go over the process of how to delete a file that you can't seem to delete otherwise. You typically won't need to do this step, and really this should probably be the last thing you check. There are much more common reasons why files can't be deleted. But this one affects my father especially, who had a virus that kind of visited his computer and changed a lot of permissions behind the scenes that are still having, ramifications here to this day. So my dad quite often will have some files like this can't delete annoying file that I've got here on my desktop of my Windows 10 box. So you'll notice when I go to delete that, we get a notification right away that I can't delete it, I need administrative privileges. This is kind of abnormal. This is our first sign that there's something going on. I'm just logged into Windows 10 as a normal administrative user. I own this computer. So there isn't a multi-user environment or anything. So typically, I'm allowed to delete things that are sitting on my desktop or in my documents without any additional administrative privileges required. So I shouldn't really be seeing this, but I am. But let's see what happens if I continue anyways. We'll note that we just get denied and we're not allowed to, and we can try again until the cows come home, but it's not going to work. And that's because our NTFS permissions are kind of whacked out on this file. So when this happens to you, or when you want to check on this, let's right click on the file and go into the properties. It can be a file on your desktop or anywhere on the C drive, as I mentioned. You'll notice we have a series of tabs here, and we want to head on over to the security tab, which is kind of our gateway into the NTFS permissions for this file. You'll see right away that it's telling me literally that I don't have permission to really read the permissions. I don't know anything about this file. Normally this is going to have much more information, and we're going to make it have much more information here by clicking on our advanced button. When we head into the advanced security settings, under this owner field, you'll see that right now it says it's unable to display the current owner. So that's kind of the first key that we need to address. I'm going to reclaim this file as the owner, and then we'll see what happens. So I'm going to click this change button here, which pulls up an interface to select my group or my user. This is a little bit of a throwback. This interface hasn't changed in 15 or 20 years. So your initial instinct may be, well, I just want a browse button, or I want it just to be me automatically. But you are going to have to do a little bit of smart work here to figure this out. One trick, which I'll show here, is if you want to open up a command window. Oops. If you type in the word set and hit enter, this kind of shows your environment variables, and one of them is who you actually are. Your username is right here. So I'm currently logged in as Matt First. So what I need to do is assign the Matt First user permissions to own this file. So what I'm going to do here is type in Matt First, and I'm going to check my name, which resolves. You'll see it kind of prepends actually the name of my desktop beforehand, which we won't get into the deep dive on why it does that. But that means it's synced up and we've got this underline and we're good to go. So at that point, I'm going to click OK. We're going to apply. That's fine. That's OK. And let's check it out again now when we go back and take a look at it here. I'll get rid of our command window. So we have a little bit of a different look in this screen now. Up top, normally we would have a list of users, which would typically be our user and maybe some groups or an administrator or a system. But right now there's nothing. So let's give ourselves permission. We now own it after that first step, but we need to give ourselves permissions. And you may not have to take ownership of it. You may just be able to do this next step. If you get into the security tab and see that we are presented with an area for a list, but we don't get any users or groups. So when we click that, we're going to go through the same process here of adding ourselves. So once again, we've got that same interface as before. I'm going to type in my user just to make sure my spelling's right. I could just blindly click OK, but let's just click on check names, which kind of does a little check and checks it against our user list and make sure it works. And we're looking good. So after we OK this, we can give our Matt First user, or whatever the name of your user happened to be, full control. We'll apply that and hey, OK. And I think if my fingers are crossed now, we'll be able to delete this file. So right away we notice that we didn't get the warning when we moved it to the trash, and we can also empty our trash, and away we go. So let's just let me create another file real quick, and we'll just super quick review what we did and maybe get into a little bit of the nerdier backstory about what NTFS is and all that sort of good stuff. So I'm going to make a file first. So what happens when you make a file, just in case you're curious or there's a lot going on? Your operating system, Windows, needs to decide what the permissions are for this file. Once upon a time, back say in Windows 3.1 or Windows 95 days, the days where we didn't really have to worry as much about viruses and people stealing our bank accounts over the internet and things like that, there really wasn't a lot of permissions in the Windows world in terms of individual files. But as the operating system got more complex and Microsoft merged Windows 95 with the Windows NT branch, which kind of happened mainly with Windows XP, they provided a file system that had a lot more meta information about who could access the files. That came kind of naturally since NT was designed to be both a server and a workstation operating system. And in both cases, you have multiple user accounts on those machines. Quite often, multiple employees will share a workstation, and obviously servers have a lot of accounts for all of your users, file servers and things like that. So on those machines, you needed to be able to limit it so that your accounting department could see the accounting files and your technical team, which had no need to see the accounting files, would be locked out of that on your server and also on your workstations. So the NTFS started to get more popular as the OS matured, and at this point, the Windows 10, it has a lot of power, and there's many accounts that are created kind of behind the scenes for running many different services. So even though everything kind of looks the same in terms of how a typical user uses Windows, things are going on behind the scenes. Anyways, so Windows kind of automatically determined when I created this file, it had to decide, it didn't ask me, do you want to change the permissions or what kind of permissions do you want for this file. So it just needs to default to some settings. So if we look over here onto a good file that hasn't been changed from a virus or inherited some problems from a folder above, we'll see that we kind of inherited a couple users here. You notice the last time I did this, or when the file had nothing, I just kind of added myself. But a typical file that's created automatically using my interactions through right-click and create a new file or create a new Word document, it's typically going to have a setup like this on Windows, where this is a group. You can see that there's an individual icon under Matt First, and then there's a couple users here under the System and Administrators, indicating that that's a group. So all the users under the System group and all the users under Administrators would have the permissions that you see down here in terms of full control, modify, etc., etc. Checkbox means it's available. Deny, if there's a checkbox, means it's been explicitly denied. Anyway, so the default for the security for the NTFS permissions for a file are typically going to look like this on a Windows machine. So this is kind of the good sample as opposed to the bad sample. If I had a multi-user environment where I had a different user, if I had a kid or a spouse or what have you that I shared a computer with, you could come in here and add or remove permissions for specific files, whether or not the other person is allowed to read it or delete it and things like that. So just a little bit of background of how things have evolved and gotten to this point and why things are such as they are. Long story short, if you have some problems with files and you can't delete them and you've tried everything else, maybe the NTFS permissions is your thing. So right click on that file, go into security. If you need to, if there's no ownership of it, you need to go into the advanced and claim the ownership. And then you need to pop back into the security tab and add yourself as a user, or you can add a group if you will, which we talked about a little bit. But I just add yourself as a user, use that set command, give yourself full permissions, and then you should be able to move that file around. All right, good luck everybody, and thanks a lot.